Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart, and today I'll be breaking down the 13 game slate here for Wednesday night on DraftKings, talking through my favorite plays, some core plays for you guys, as well as some value plays, and building a potential lineup for you guys for this slate tomorrow night. As always, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell as well. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. Patreon is coming soon. And let's get right into this breakdown as it's a 13 game slate. A lot to talk about here, probably one of the biggest slates we'll get all season. So, jumping into the game totals real quick, as we can see, a lot of them, some of them won't be on here. Some of them won't have game totals. We're still kind of waiting for some of them. But Blazers, Pistons, 4 point spread, 214 game total. Two very bad teams there. Bucks, Raptors, 4.5 point spread, 224. Pacers, Celtics right now is 11.5 point spread. So obviously huge blowout risk there. Hornets, Rockets, 2 point spread, 223 game total. Nuggets, Timberwolves, 3 point spread, 223.5. Grizz, Jazz, 2.5, 228.5. Kings, Warriors, it is a 7.5 point spread, no game total. And that's it for right now. As you can see, we're missing about half the games, if not, a few more than half the games on the slate right now. And yeah, it's a 17-point game there in that Spurs Suns game. So I turned it off, didn't even watch it. It was just very, very disgusting trying to watch that game there. So Giannis and Dame here at the top. Giannis 11K, Dame 9.7K. I think they're both priced about right. Giannis hasn't had like a huge explosion game yet. I know with Dame there, it does kind of limit his upside a tad, just a tad, I'd say, because Dame obviously will have times where he controls the ball a few possessions in a row because he's hitting the shots. But yeah, I think they're both priced about right. Offense is going to flow through them. Chris Middleton is still on a minutes limit, as you can see, 16 minutes, 17 minutes. So if it's going to be, around 20 minutes, still have no interest in him there at that price tag. Brooke Lopez is a fine center play. Should see about 30-ish minutes if he stays out of foul trouble. Can't have those random pop-off games where he goes for like 5 blocks, hits some threes, gets some rebounds. So I don't mind them there as like a random GPP contrarian play if you do land on him. Bobby Portis off the bench here. Kind of a high energy guy. Should see about 20 minutes, as you can see. Does have a ceiling, as we saw there in that last game. 7 to 10 in 19 minutes, 16, 8, 2, 1, and 2, 35 fantasy points. So that's what you can get from Bobby. No real need to go out of your way for him. And then off, Beasley will start. He'll play about 30-ish minutes. He will, there'll be the games where he does get close to 10 shots. And if he hits his shots, he could get you there. But still, I don't love that price tag for a guy who's going to see in between like 2 and 8 shots. Really depends on every given night. So not a lot of interest here in these Milwaukee Bucks, shooting guards and small forwards. Payne will play, the back point guard minutes, play about 12. Connaughton will play about 20-ish minutes. I guess he's an okay value player there at 4,300. Same thing with Jay Crowder. Looks like he'll play about 20-ish, mid-20s minutes. He's another fine value play down there at 4,200. And that's really it. It's not a ton of interest for me on the Milwaukee side. On the Toronto side, Pascal's 9,200. I think it's a fine price tag. Obviously, not the best matchup here. He'll be pretty low owned, but he does have a really, really solid ceiling. Scotty Barnes' price really hasn't moved too much, and he's still kind of the starting combo guard because obviously they do have Dennis Schroeder, who is the point guard, but still, Scotty Barnes, I still think it is definitely still a little bit too cheap here at his price tag, given his minutes, given his role, and given his upside. Moving on down here to Dennis Schroeder. I think it's a fair price for Dennis Schroeder. As you can see, he's had a game for me went for 42. I had a game for me went for 25. So he has a pretty, boomer bust range, but still, he should see about mid 30s minutes. Obviously, a tough matchup here going against Dame. But he's a guy who does have some upside there. He's been great at getting assists. So I do have some interest there in Dennis Schroeder. Jakob Poeltl, I don't need him there for the size. So it could be a Jakob Poeltl game. He is pretty productive, so I don't mind him. OG, one of those guys who can randomly go off, have a good game. Nice to see him come back there, played 30 minutes. So I'd expect about 35 minutes here for OG. So I think right now he'd probably be my favorite play alongside Scotty Barnes, just because they're going to need his defense. And he is, decently productive out as well when he's out there. Gary Trent will come off the bench here. I'd say he probably plays in between 15 to 25 minutes, maybe 30 if he's hitting his shots. I think he's an okay GPP play. Precious is questionable. If he's good to go, he should play about 20 minutes, the backup power forward center minutes. If he's out, Boucher could see somewhere in between, 12 to 15 minutes. He's always, pretty productive. So I don't mind him there as a value play at 3,700. And that's really it. Jalen McDaniels will see a few minutes, but nothing too crazy there. Same thing with Grady Dick. Moving on to Portland here. versus Detroit. Obviously, two pretty bad teams here. Aiton's pretty cheap here. I had a nice bounce back there. 10 points, 23 rebounds, 32 minutes. So I think it's a fine play there. A decent center option here. Jeremy Grant, I think he is a little bit too cheap here. He's been super aggressive, as you can see, 12 shots, 14, 16, 18. So he's been coming more and more aggressive each and every game. The minute should be there if it's a close game. So I actually do have a good amount of interest here in Jeremy Grant at 6,200. Shaden Sharp, same thing, pretty cheap for his role. Should play mid to high 30s minutes. Going to be extremely aggressive when he's out there. So I do have a good amount of interest in both of those guys right now. Scoot Henderson, I think he's a fine contrarian option. If he can stay out of foul trouble, which he hasn't been able to do any single game yet besides that first game. But he did see foul trouble in I think the first half, and they kept him out for a while until the second half there. But yeah, he's just very, very foul prone right now. So I don't really think there's a need to get to him at all because it's not the best price tag. He's super foul prone, and his ceiling has not been great. Malcolm Brogdon's price has come up. I think he's still a very fair player, fair play there at 5,700. He should be pretty aggressive and productive off the bench. Robert Williams is back here, so maybe that eats into DeAndre Ayton's minutes a little bit. He should see, kind of low 20s minutes. Always a productive guy there. So I think I'd rather take a shot on him than Ayton. And then Kamara will move back to a bench role, probably see anywhere from like 12 to 20-ish minutes. I guess he's an okay value at 3,800. In Thibault, he'll get the start, but he's Thibault. He's just absolute garbage. Moving on to Detroit here. Cade coming in. I like him here in this matchup. Should be super aggressive. His minutes have been great. He does have a pretty high ceiling there. So Cade, good amount of interest in him. Duran, if he's good to go, absolutely love him here going against DeAndre Ayton, who's absolute Swiss cheese at defense. Dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury here, though. So we have to keep an eye out on that because if he is out, they could definitely start, Marvin Bagley alongside Isaiah Stewart. They could maybe get a little bit weird, go with the James Wiseman. So there could be some value here on the Detroit side. I honestly think if, they start Marvin Bagley, obviously super cheap there at 4,000. I think he'd probably see, mid 20s minutes there. That'd probably be the safe bet. So he'd be a really solid play. I would have a good amount of interest in Isaiah Stewart. Maybe they push him to the 5 here. Maybe he sees, probably see 30 plus minutes, which I think he'd probably be my favorite, big man play here on Detroit side if there is no Duran. Obviously, if there's Duran, it's really just the two at the top for me. I still think Asar Thompson is way too cheap here. As you can see, just been fantastic defensively and rebounding the ball. His shots finally fell there, 15 points. So, I mean, it looks like he's a monster ceiling here just because he's super good at getting rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. At some point, these stats are going to come down, but still, I don't mind riding the hot streak here with him at 5,800. He should probably be pretty popular tomorrow, but for good reason. He's been super productive so far. Ivy, more so, just random play there. Don't have much interest in him. Burks kind of the same thing. I mean, they'll be the two main guards off the bench. Burks has actually been pretty productive, as you can see here. So if you land on either one, I don't mind it, but still, it's hard to really trust their just production there. Killian Hayes, the same thing. All three will play like mid 20s minutes. It really comes down to who has a hot hand. Out of those three, I think Burks is probably the safest. Then Ivy, then Hayes. I talked about Bagley and his situation there. He'll see about 15 minutes if, the rotation, the starters are good to go, and there's no injuries there with Duran. Moving on to Indiana and Boston here. Obviously, huge blowout risk. Tyrese Halliburton is questionable, so we have to keep an eye out on that. Thankfully, it's one of the first few games, so know that news pretty early. Benedict Mathurin is questionable as well here. And then Jalen Smith is also questionable. So this could turn into a situation where we get a ton of value here. Guys like Turner and Hield would be definitely viable in Bruce Brown, but still, I think I'd rather get to the cheaper plays because if this game does blow out, they'll give extra run to guys like Nemhard, who'd be a fantastic play there. Even some of these cheaper guys like Isaiah Jackson, who'd be a great play. Nawara down there, 3,000. So this is more of a wait and see approach to kind of see what happens. If it's a full team, then I'd say these guys are just more contrarian plays like a Halliburton, Turner. Both be pretty solid plays. Don't know if I'd have much interest in anyone else here if it's a full solid team here. On the Boston side, not a ton of interest. They did drop down Tatum's price tag here. It's just one of those things. If you think it stays close, I love Tatum, love Porzingis, Brown, Holiday, love all their price tags besides White, who is still, I think, a little bit too risky to play there for me. But obviously, I mean, this game could blow out, and they could definitely not see third quarter or even fourth quarter run. As we saw in that Washington Wizards game, it was a blowout, but still, surprisingly, Tatum and Brown both got there in less than 30 minutes there for Tatum. And then Brown got there in about 32. Obviously, hit 8 of 13 3-pointers. Not going to happen every single time. So I think these guys are all fine plays here. Moving on to Washington here. And if the game does blow out, you can definitely see Peyton Pritchard get some extended run off the bench. I will mention him. Saw 25, went 0 of 8, but still productive there with 7 rebounds and 6 assists. So maybe there's a dart throw you could play if you do think the game blows out. Moving on to Washington here versus Atlanta. A little bit better of a matchup here for Washington, a team who's really, really bad. So obviously we know the offense is going to go through Poole and Kuzma. I think they come in at fine price tags. They should be decently contrarian on the slates, and both of them are going to shoot the ball a ton. So we haven't really seen a pop-up game from either one of them. They're priced about right, so I do think we'll get them at low ownership. If you want to go there, I don't mind it. Trey Jones, fair play, fair price for him. The minutes aren't great, still seeing less than 30, so that's the risk there. Denny, he can be productive when he's out there. Once again, the minutes have not been great. Obviously, they've dealt with some blowouts and some weird rotations, but yeah, that's about it. If Gafford is back, I don't mind taking a shot on him here at 51 minutes or 5,100. He should see about 30 minutes. He's usually pretty productive. If he's out, we could definitely see a lineup where they start Kuzma at the 5 again. So keep an eye out on that. Kispert, he's a shooter off the bench. Don't like that there. Delon Wright is actually, I think, a decent play there at 4,200. And Bilal did get the start, but he was god awful. Played a ton of blowout minutes, so it definitely helped him get him back there. But yeah, I think he should move to the bench there. Nothing too crazy here on the Wizards side. Danilo is not really getting any run, and that's really about it. On the Atlanta side here, Trey is questionable. If he's good to go, I absolutely love him here in the spot, 8,900. I'm expecting one of these games for Trey to absolutely go off and finally hit some shots. This could be the matchup here against the Wizards. So really, really like Trey right now if he's good to go. Obviously, if he's out, makes DeJounte Murray a fantastic play there. Bogdan could move to the starting lineup as well. He'd be a fantastic play. Even if he didn't move to the starting lineup, I'd still really like him there off the bench. Maybe they could move a guy like Kobe Buffkin into the starting lineup. I doubt it. They'd probably go with like a Patty Mills there. Also, definitely keep an eye on here for the Trey Young news. If he's good to go, Trey Young looks great. DeJounte looks fine. He's coming off a huge game there, 61 fantasy points against Minnesota. Clint Capella, fine price tag for him. Jalen Johnson, still really like him. He's a super productive forward here for the Hawks, who's having a great season so far. So I do like him here in the spot against Washington. So I'm going to throw him in the lineup for now. Rest of the guards, you guys know kind of my thoughts on these wings. Bogdan's going to be the safest. He'll be the most aggressive. Does have the assist upside as well. Hunter, pretty score independent, but he can get you there if he's hitting his shots. Bay is kind of the odd one out of the bunch. Had 2 decent games in a row. He's a fine play. And then Okongwu, if you think Clint Capella gets in foul trouble, as you can see, a pretty solid play there from the center position. Pretty cheap price tag. And that's really it here for Atlanta. Moving on to the Pelicans and OKC here. Pelican side, if you guys got the news the other day, was it yesterday, where Brandon Ingram was out, and if you played the Pelicans, I feel bad for you. I feel bad for me because we got absolutely screwed there. We got them at extremely low ownership. Most people fell asleep, did not, change the lineups to get at least one of, Zion or CJ in, and we did not get rewarded. We got absolutely screwed by a 30-point blowout to the Warriors. So wait and see for this Brandon Ingram news, because if he's good to go, I still really like Brandon Ingram. It's a fantastic spot here against OKC. Zion and CJ would be fine plays. J-Val would still be a very, very good contrarian play there. But once again, if there is no Brandon Ingram, I think you're on at least one of Zion or CJ. Obviously, it feels a little bit better getting to CJ. Probably make him a little bit higher owned compared to Zion, but both would be great plays. J-Val would be an even better play still. The risk there is the minutes, but still he's a huge, huge upside there. Herb Jones would be a fantastic play at 5,000. The minutes would probably be into the mid to high 30s. He should be more aggressive offensively. But yeah, we just kind of got screwed by a blowout there, but a lot of interest here in the Pelicans as of right now. Hawkins actually got the start and did great there. As you can see, 35 minutes, 27 fantasy points. Obviously, it helped with him playing a few extra minutes there into the fourth quarter with that huge blowout. But if he starts again with no Brandon Ingram, I do like him, even though he's pretty score independent. And then Larry Nance should see, about 15-ish minutes there. And I did mention Dyson Daniels. I liked him. He's a guy who's seen, 19, 22 minutes in close games. And then there in the blowout, saw 24 minutes, but he's been decently productive. So I don't mind him there as more so of a low-owned, risky GPP play, who's pretty cheap. On to OKC here. SGA has been fantastic. I actually really like him here in this spot. As you can see, 60, 65, 24 and a half, terrible game there. 53. He's had monster upside there with the assists, with the rebounds. I love riding the hot streak here with him. Giddy, fine price tags. Still don't love it here. He will have those random pop off games, but you just still don't feel great going to him with SGA there. Chat, as I mentioned with Victor, they'll have games where they're fantastic. They'll have games where they're terrible. Obviously, he only played 24 minutes, which is pretty interesting there. Obviously, had huge foul trouble. So once again, they're going to deal with a lot of foul trouble there. Well, that will really limit their minutes. But as you can see, he still went off for 36, had 4 blocks, 2 steals, had a game where he had 7 blocks. So the upside there with Chet is monster. It's just, can he stay out of foul trouble, and can the game stay close? If you think that happens, I think it's a really, really solid price tag there for Chet. I love the price tag here for Jalen Williams. Had a really solid game there, 19, 7, and 6. He should be super aggressive, should play mid 30s minutes. Really, really like him here at the spot, 5,900, even playing alongside SGA. He's kind of the main number 2 in the offense. Lou Dort's there. He's fine. Not much about it. He'll have those random pop-off games as well. Those two are still out. They'll mix in some Carson Wallace. I guess he's an okay value play there off the bench. Nothing too crazy. The same thing with Isaiah Joe. They're at, excuse me, I had a sneeze. They're at 4,000. And that's really it. Moving on to Brooklyn versus Miami. Obviously, a lot of news here with Brooklyn. Claxton is still out for Wednesday. Cam Johnson is out as well. And then Dinwiddie is questionable. So we saw them start Bridges, Simmons, Cam Thomas, Dinwiddie, and DFS there. And then obviously in the second half, Dinwiddie did not come back, and they threw in Lonnie Walker. So if Dinwiddie is back, I really like all three. Mike Bridges will probably be the lowest owned of the bunch just because he's the most expensive. But I think all 4 guys here, Bridges, Simmons, Cam Thomas, and Dinwiddie, all look fantastic. My least favorite would probably be Cam Thomas just because he's super scoring independent, even though he's been fantastic, as you can see, 36, 30, 33. He's him. He's a walking bucket, but still 6,600, a super scoring independent guard. I mean, one of these games, he's going to have a bad game shooting the ball. So that's why he's kind of my least favorite, but still really, really solid play there. And then DFS, Lonnie, Royce O'Neal, and De'Aaron Sharp will see the minutes off the bench there with, DFS. Seeing that, actually he'll start, sorry. So 5,100. I think he's a fine play. He's been way more productive this year than he was in years past. So I'm still a little hesitant to get to him, but still fine price tag. And then Lonnie Walker would probably play about 20 minutes there. He'll be a decent play. And then Royce O'Neal, he should play about, mid 20s to 30 minutes off the bench there. He'd probably be my favorite there of the bunch. Now, if there is no Dinwiddie, I'm assuming they would start Lonnie Walker, which may make him a very solid play there. And then off the bench, we'd see Royce O'Neal. We'd still see De'Aaron Sharp, who played 10 minutes and went for 24 fantasy points. So if he gets the minutes, he's super productive there, super foul prone, but always risky there with the minutes. And I would think we'd see one more guard off the bench here, probably Dennis Smith Jr. if he is good to go, but it looks like he's doubtful. So maybe they throw in some Derek Whitehead or Armani Brooks. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, there could be a lot of some decent value there on Brooklyn. On the Miami side here, Jimmy, questionable. Bam is questionable as well. And then Caleb Martin is still out. Looks like Bam's good to go. So for Miami, I think they're all fine price tags. Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, nothing stands out for me. The offense is going to run through all three. Tyler looks probably the best just because he's been the safest, as you can see, the past 3 games, and the most aggressive. Minutes have been great, 40 or more the past 3 games. So he looks the best there, but nothing, it's not like I'm going to click on him right away. Kyle Lowry has upside. It's just, can he stay aggressive? Usually not. And then that's really, it's there. Obviously, the big news is really just Jimmy, because if he's out, maybe it opens up some value. We could look to a guy like just Jason Richardson is back. So I want to mention him. Played 23 minutes that last game. Should play mid-20s as well. So I still think he's a very solid value there at 4,000. If you're looking for a guy who should play mid-20s minutes, he will be aggressive, good defender. So I do think they'll look to him a lot, especially if there's no Jimmy. And I think Kevin Love is still a fair value play. Very disappointing. He only played 18 minutes there, did not hit a single shot. Of course, I went to him there. Super frustrating, but yeah. And then they will mix in some Duncan Robinson, some Jaime Jaquez. Fine plays there. Moving on to the last half of the games here. Excuse me. Need some water here. So we just saw this game tonight. It was super disgusting. Cleveland ended up getting blown out by like 15 there. Really wasn't a competitive game there in the last half of the third quarter, going into the fourth here, but still, with no Garland, possibly no Levert. Hopefully he's back tomorrow. So if there's no Garland, no Levert, no Allen, once again they'll start Mitchell, Mobley, Struess, Okoro, and Dean Wade. Obviously Mitchell and Mobley would both look great still, even at those elevated price tags. Struess still would be a very fine play, even though he shot like 1 of 20 tonight. Okoro's price hasn't moved. He's still been very, very good. So I like him a lot, even though he's not the best shooter. And then Dean Wade he'd be a fine play. I don't think he'll get much ownership. I'd rather go to other value plays, but if he stands out of foul trouble, he should see 30 plus minutes. So he could definitely get you there. But I went to 1% Niang tonight and he shot 4 of 12, which is super frustrating because he could have gone easily for 20 plus fantasy points at 1%. But one of these days I'll get rewarded for a great play, but it wasn't last night. But yeah, I'd still expect Niang to see 20 plus minutes, 4,000, super cheap there still. So I do have a good amount of interest in him. And then we did see some decent minutes for Imani Bates and Porter Jr. there. Also keep an eye out on the news there. But if Levert's back, it's really just going to be Mitchell, Mobley, Levert, and Struess and Okoro. So like the starting five would be fantastic. My favorite would be Levert, probably Okoro, and then Mitchell, and then Mobley and Struess would kind of be the fourth and fifth option for me. And off the bench, we'd still see Dean Wade, Niang, and a mix of Porter Jr., Bates, and Thompson. That's really it. Moving on to the Knicks here. Super cheap price tags once again for the trio here. Really like Randall, 8,100. Brunson, fine play there, 7,900. The offense will, obviously run through both of them. Barrett's a fun play. Always a solid GPP. You can try and play there in the mid range. Nothing too crazy. Mitchell Robinson's price has come up. Not the best game tonight here against the Cavs, but as we can see, does have a pretty solid ceiling. Quickly had a decent game here off the bench. Actually shot the ball pretty well. So I do have some interest here in Quickly at 5,400. If this game stays close, he should be able to have a pretty solid game there off the bench. In these wings, I think they're all fine plays. Nothing too crazy there. Isaiah Hartenstein had the best game of the team here for the Knicks tonight in their blowout win. But I kind of expect him to drop down to about 15 to 20-ish minutes there. But still a fine value play there, 3,500. Kind of like a Okongwu. Moving on to Denver here versus Minnesota. Should be a great game here. Jokic, if you guys feel fine with the value, I don't mind going to him here. Obviously, with a few of these earlier games, there could be some decent value opening up, some absolute minimum price guys. But if not, it's going to be super hard to get to Jokic. He'd just be more so of a contrarian play there, 12K. I still think it's a very solid price tag for Murray. As we saw last year, his price got up to like mid 8Ks to close to 9K. So I still think there's room for him to explode there. So I really like him here in this matchup. Gordon, MPJ, KCP, all priced about right. As I said, they all have super low floors. They all have a super high ceiling, which they'll randomly get at times. MPJ is probably the safest just because of his rebounding upside, but still, they're all fine plays there in the mid range. Off the bench, we'll see Reggie Jackson get some minutes. Christian Brown, some Najee, some Peyton Watson as well. So if you're looking for some value, you could go to Peyton Watson, but yeah, not too interested in the value there for Denver. We know the offense is just really through Jokic and MPJ and Jamal Murray. Moving on to Minnesota here. I still think it's a fantastic price here for Anthony Edwards, who's got his 49 there at 2% ownership. Yes, the other slate, so that was fantastic. Karl Towns, I still think is a very solid price tag here. Should be a solid matchup going against Aaron Gordon. I haven't seen a pop-up game from him here yet, but still, we know his upside is massive. Rudy Gobert might be some foul trouble. Could make him a pretty solid contrarian play there. Still don't love the price tag, but he's been pretty solid in the first 3 games so far. But still, definitely a lot of foul trouble risk guarding Jokic. Excuse me. Conley, I think it's a fine play. 5,000, super cheap, but still not seeing about 30 minutes, so it's hard to trust him there. I think Kyle Anderson does intrigue me a little bit here. We know he has pretty solid upside. It seems about capped, 25 to 30 minutes, but still, he could definitely get you there in that amount of time. Reed, microwave scorer off the bench. As you can see, he can go for 42.5, and he can also go for 16 or 15. Really just depends on if he hits his shots. And if one of the bigs gets in foul trouble, obviously it's extended minutes for a guy like Reed and Kyle Anderson there. So I do have some interest in those backup bigs there for the Timberwolves. Jaden McDaniels will start. It was nice to see him back there for that game, 24 minutes. Was decently aggressive, 5 of 6, shot the ball well. So I think it's a fine play there at 4,700. And that's really there for Minnesota. Charlotte here. LaMelo Ball has been god awful the first couple games, as you can see. Still on a minutes limit, about 33 minutes. So I think he's a solid contrarian play. He can definitely get you there in that amount of minutes, but still, I'd love it if he's not on a minutes limit. Rozier, fine play. Hayward, fine play. Mark Williams, decent play. Nothing really stands out for me here for these Hornets guys. I mean, they all have upside. They all have upside. They all seem priced about right. Brandon Miller has been super aggressive off the bench, as you can see. Went off for 39 fantasy points. So I think it's an okay play there, 5,400. But yeah, nothing really stands out to me on the Charlotte side there. They're all kind of just more so contrarian GPP options. Sengun, I think he's a fine play there at 7,700. Actually, a pretty strong play. As you can see, in close games, he should see mid 30s minutes, which last year his minutes were still pretty up and down at times, but he's been super, super productive. So I love him here in this matchup against Mark Williams. I think Sengun should be absolutely able to feast. Super foul prone at times still, but I love that upside there at 7,700 for him. I think it's solid upside there for Fred VanVleet, 7,400. You know, same thing with Jalen Green. Once again, I still feel like these Houston guys are all way too cheap here. Jabari Smith, he's been way more aggressive this season than usual than last year. So I think him and Sengun would probably be my favorites. But I do have some interest in the other guys. No real interest in the value plays here for the Rockets. Moving on to Chicago and Dallas here. Zach LaVine is questionable, but he should be able to be good to go. So still very cheap price tags here for the Bulls going against Dallas. Really like DeMar and Vooch. Vooch is coming off a really, really good game there. 24, 17, and 3. Super aggressive. Once again, it gets a great matchup here. Again, it's going against Derek Lively. So I do like Vooch a ton here in this matchup, in this spot. Kobe White, a fine mid-range play there. Should see, probably 30 minutes, if not a few more. Can definitely get you there. Been pretty aggressive when he's out there. So I don't mind him there. Crusoe, fine value play. Nothing more, nothing less. Same thing with Pat Williams. I think he's an okay value play. He's starting. It's just not seeing a ton of minutes. And it's hard for him to be aggressive alongside those 3 stars. Torrey Craig, also a value play there as well. Moving on to Dallas here. Absolutely love this spot for Luka, but obviously super, super pricey. And if Kyrie's back, there's really no need to get to Luka. So I think both would be fine plays, but no real priorities here. Obviously, if there is no Kyrie, Luka would definitely be viable, but still pretty tough to get to 12-6. No one else really interests me. If there is no Kyrie, I think probably Tim Hardaway Jr. would probably be my favorite there. And then we would see some more minutes for guys like Seth Curry off the bench. And Jaden Hardy did see about 10 minutes there, but nothing too crazy. It'd really just be kind of Tim Hardaway for me, and then possibly get into Luka. And I still have interest in Josh Green, 5 of 10, 21 fantasy points, fine play there, nothing too crazy. Moving on to Memphis and Utah here. On the Memphis side, I still think it's fine price tags for Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Smart. Smart would probably be my favorite of the bunch just because he's the cheapest and he's been decently aggressive as well. As you can see, he went for a 50 bomb there. So yeah, I do have a good amount of interest here for Smart. Once again, with no Adama, looks like no Rose, and yeah, no Ja Morant still, as we know. So a lot of interest here in Memphis. The offense is going to go through these 3 main guys. So I do want at least a piece of one of them, if not 2 of them. I'd prefer getting to Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr. But Bane is still a great play. And then the value guys, I don't mind, Williams, Contra, Roddy. They're all fine plays there. Roddy's minutes have been ticking up a little bit, so he'd probably be my favorite of the bunch. And then Jake LaRavia, we'll see some minutes as well. A shooter, his minutes are always in question, but if he can hit those shots, he should play a little bit more. And yeah, I expect huge minutes here out of the starting 5, just because they're running a pretty thin right now in terms of guys that are off the bench. So we'll throw in Roddy right now for some decent value there, 3,800. Moving on to the Utah side here. As I said, if these games are going to stay close, it's going to be because of monster games here from Lauri Markkanen. Another monster game there for the Denver side against Denver. So really, really like Lauri here in the spot against Memphis. Should be absolutely no different defense between him and Triple J there. Hopefully they stay out of foul trouble. But yeah, really like Markkanen here as a decently contrarian option going against Memphis. Clarkson, pretty cheap. His price tag has dropped down to 5,600. Obviously, he's been terrible the past 2 games, but still, very, very cheap price tag for Clarkson, who should be super aggressive and who should see 30 plus minutes. So I do have a good amount of interest in him there. So I'm going to throw him in for right now. And then moving on to the rest of the team, I think they're all fine plays. Nothing really stands out to me. They do have a good amount that they can bring off the bench. So really just prefer Clarkson and Laurie on the starting 5. The Clippers, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Clippers. They're playing tonight. And it's one of those things. Like they just traded for Harden. They don't have Covington, Batum, and Martin anymore. Terrence Mann is still out. Will these guys play full minutes tonight? If they do, will they play tomorrow? So it's going to be super hard to break down this team. I'm going to break it down if they're all good to go, but obviously stay up to date with the news because this could drastically change for tomorrow. And they'd be extremely shorthanded if like Kawhi or Paul George sits. But if they're all good to go, I'd still expect Harden not to be added to the list or PJ Tucker. So, Kawhi and Paul George would both look great. Prefer Kawhi still at that price tag. Russ does have some upside, but more so of a contrarian play there. Same thing with Zubac. Contrarian has huge upside. They're going to need him against Anthony Davis, but he is foul prone. So that's the downside there. You could definitely look to Plumlee as a pivot play. Bones Highland's priced up. And I think Powell would probably be my favorite off the bench. Should see mid-20s minutes. Microwave score. But yeah, that's kind of the breakdown there. It's going to be super interesting to see what happens there with the Clippers. On the Lakers side, Anthony Davis has been great the past 3 games. So once again, really like him as a spend-up play. LeBron, still don't trust the minutes. They've been kind of all over the place, as you can see, 35, 39, and 33, even though he was supposedly on like a 28 to 31 minutes limit. D'Lo, I still think comes in at a pretty solid price tag. The minutes have been solid. And as you can see, he does have some decent upside if he hits his shots. So he'd probably be my favorite play there in the mid-range. Reeves is fine. Wood did see some extended minutes off the bench because there was no Rui. But if Rui's good to go, I think I'd rather go to Rui over Wood. And then Vincent's there. Prince is there. And then moving on to the last game here, Sacramento versus Golden State Warriors. Obviously, on the Sacramento side, there is no De'Aaron Fox. They're going to start. Where do you go? They're going to start David Mitchell here. They priced him up, thank God, because if he was 3,000, we saw a few games last season where he was 3,000, like minimum priced, and I don't even know if he went for 10 points in one of those starts or 2 of those starts. It was wild, but yeah, 4,800. Thankfully, he doesn't become like a must play there at that price tag. I think they did a great job there, which is super, super nice. But it does raise my interest in guys like Monk and Herter there, even though Herter's been god awful. They could use a little bit of point Herter there. Had a solid game last game. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be probably David Mitchell, Herter, Barnes, Murray, and Sabonis. I think Murray would probably be my favorite of the bunch. 3 great games so far. Should play mid 30s minutes. Going to be super aggressive. Mike Brown wants him to shoot the ball a ton, so I do like him there a lot at 6,300 to kind of carry the offensive load with no Fox. And then I do think we'll see some more minutes for guys like Vesnikov, Duarte there off the bench. I do think Duarte could be a solid value play there. And then maybe we get a little bit more minutes for a guy like Monk, who's been seeing mid-20s minutes, but he should probably see close to 30. So I think he'd be my second favorite play behind Keegan Murray there and behind Sabonis, or in front of Sabonis. And then on the Golden State side, I like Steph, Paul, Thompson, both decent contrarian plays. Clay is questionable, but he should be good to go. Kuminga did miss that last game, but it looks like he should be good to go. If not, maybe we get Moody starting again, who only played 21 minutes, was okay there. So not a lot stands out to me. I still don't get the minutes and what's going on with Wiggins here. Just been god awful. Hasn't seen about 30 minutes. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. I mean, if Draymond's off a minutes limit, I'd like him, but everyone seems priced about right here for the Golden State side. Gary Payton Jr. will be some decent value if you want to go to him. And they will play Trace Jackson Davis if there is no Sarge there. So he could definitely be some decent value there off the bench, 3,600. But yeah, nothing too crazy there. And that is the breakdown. I know it's super tough because I want to keep these under like 20, 25 minutes, especially for these big slates, but it's super hard because it's like you want to break down each and every team and every play and who's the best, who's not. And it turns into, trying to limit myself of not rambling because there's just so much to talk about. So that's why in future videos, I'm going to try to keep these, even on the big slates, under 20 minutes for the big ones, and then 15 for the mid-sized ones, and like 12 for the smaller slates, just because I'm going to have a lot of more of my breakdown on my Patreon write-ups, which will be coming out soon. But to finish off this build here, I know it's not perfectly. We can definitely rearrange this to make it, better. But right now, we're going to go to Ben Simmons there. Love that price tag. Almost coming off a triple double there. Wanted a piece from that Brooklyn side. So as I said, a lot of news. 13 game slate. It's going to be super hectic. A lot of news here in the back half that we do have to wait and see what happens with. So yeah, make sure to stay up to date with the news. As always, hit that like button. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.